Hope everybody's tuning in. We're started here at 12:30. 12:32. I think people are going to start logging back in. I'm trying to look at the. There's that. There's the Zoom. Exit full screen. Okay. All right. So she told me that she would not be available. So we're going to start something a little new here. My name is Michael Jordan, and I have a company called AB Friendly Company in Cheyenne, Wyoming. We do commercial beekeeping and education. We run pallet hives, things like that. So, for some reason I can't see everybody on the chat forum, but I can see the devices here. Let's see. I'm sharing the screen. Okay. So this part of the program, you got to see the beginning of it, where it was basically hive biology. The bees, the life cycle, how they produce wax, how they forage. It was the basic beginning of beekeeping. And now you're going to look into where you're going to, I guess, put what kind of hive you're going to put your bees in. So that's kind of where we're going to start this off here. You get to the PowerPoint presentation, it's not. All right, different types of hives, the beekeeper. What is a hive? Let's see, we get up here. Yeah. What is a hive? A hive has nothing to do with bees and everything to do with beekeeping. Hives are beekeeping structure made to house a colony of honeybees. Bees will live in any place. And people don't understand what I'm saying, meaning that if there's an open space that could be protected from the elements and predators, the bees are probably already in it. We see them living off of limbs of trees. We see them on trees, in walls of homes. They're basically, they'll survive anywhere. My mentor, Jack States, that helped founded the entomology and beekeeping division at the University of Wyoming, he showed us how to use just a cardboard box and some PVC for frames. And for $1.25, you made a box and you found bees and you produced honey. So it's the easiest thing. They live about anywhere, but it's about controlling the structure. Now, there are some systems of the hive that are no-go and some that are good. The system of beekeeping is to house your colony of bees so they can produce wax, store product, and brood their colonies. The hive is the housing system. The colony is what's in the housing system. So what we're basically doing is we're setting up a system to work our bees. Okay, see if we get to the next thing here. The yes and no's of hives, which is kind of funny. The hive has to have removable inspectable structures. There's two types of hives. There's those that you can move and modify the inside of the hive, and then there's those that are let the bees be bees. And the law states that you must have and be able to remove the structures of the hive to do visual inspections, meaning lifting the frames of brood so you can inspect to see brooding pattern, American fowl brood, all kinds of things like that. And to find out what's better for the bees and for the beekeeper, they've built systems of inspection that you have to do. You can contact any of your beekeeper inspectors. They do all the inspection you need. but they can't do it unless you have what they call a very respectable hive. Let the bees build. There's a lot of them, and some of them are still used today. Skeeps or baskets, which bees would build inside of them. The Perone hive, that's very popular through Spain and throughout different areas. It's a large box to house bees. It's extremely big. It takes a pulley system. You raise the Perone box, the comb builds down. You raise it up, put a box in it, and put it down. Sometimes you get comb up to 20 feet. Log hives are still used all over the world today, and some of them are being modified for commercial sale. So you might even see them come to the U.S., but right now they're adequate at moving frames that hasn't been isolated quite yet. Let's see here. There we go. So the yeses in other countries, there is a Perone hive, and you can see that they lift the whole top of the Perone hive, and you can see all the comb going down. You can see it's got like 20 frames where they build off of it, and this whole structure is to be lifted in the air on a big pulley system. And on the other side, you see log hives, and you can see on the bottom actually a commercial Turkish log hive builder. That's what they build. The oldest style of beekeeping of housing, a hive. So let's get on the first one, and that's what most people see, is top bar beekeeping. The ability of the bees to build their wax from a single stage down as naturally as formidable as possible. The one picture you see there on the left is an open frame top bar hive. It's just stacked and set there. There's a long bar that they sit on, and then a base plate on the bottom for the bees to kind of move around on the bottom. The other one is a typical top bar hive that you usually see. Long, anywhere from 28 to 35 frames. The entrances on the side for the bees to come in and out. And it's a controlled measure of natural beekeeping. Top bar key, as the name states, there are no frames, just a top bar along the bees to construct. The pros and cons of both. The pros of choosing top bars, there's no heavy lifting. You're not lifting boxes. It's very easy to harvest honey. You just pull a frame out and cut it underneath the bar and then just replace. Other ones are the natural steams. The top bar allows bees to build all their comb naturally. You're not putting foundation in or anything to start them off of. You're just putting a little bead of wax and they build right off of it. This allows you to carry out inspections because you can pull up the hive and tilt it. The bees are usually draw the comb away from the walls, sometimes just placing little burr combs on the side that you have to cut off. But allowing that, you can just pull them up. And on some top bar hives, they're modifying so you can make the lid kind of half and put a honey box on it, so they can build all the way across and then start putting honey up on top. So, but they're very easy to work. Once they're built and stable, you don't move them. You just work them. You don't have to have boxes or anything to them. The cons of them is you have to feed the bees very high sugar to get them to make a lot of comb. They're building everything from scratch, and like here in the Rocky Mountain area, the floral season probably isn't enough for you to do a very large top bar hive. If you're just letting them go to do that and stuff, that you have to really promote a lot of sugar feeding for them to build enough wax to build this. And if there's nothing structurally to hold them, like if you're in Texas, Florida and stuff, on really hot days, if you don't work them early in the mornings or late in the afternoon, most people work them early in the mornings because during the day they get so hot, the comb's flimsy and will fall. It takes time to work a top bar hive because you have to move very slow. You have to remove the top bars, which is not easy. You have to lift them up and scrape because sometimes little burrs on the side. And then you got to flip it around to work them, as you can see here, so you can see them. Takes a little bit of time to work them, but they're extremely enjoyable and quite fun. A weir hive, or ware. This is like taking the top bar and putting it into a box. So this is another formal method. They've started out kind of how Perone did, where they just had their tops, and as you lift the box, you put another box in it. You lift the box, you put another box in it. But they have gained to where now you can pull out little frames and pull them out the sides. And there's many different styles. Warre hives or weir hives is called adding extra boxes on the bottom and stacking, called nearing. Causes comb to regularly be harvested in cycles because you pull them up, you can remove them. The weir hive or warre was built to mimic a hollow tree. A French Albert called Ernie Weir came up with the design and solution of keeping bees for minimal interference with their day-to-day activities. Originally, warre were only considered top bar, which gave the bees freedom to build from the down. Like I said, this was just probably putting the top bar into a box. It's the natural stream. The bees build their combs naturally from scratch, build downward. And as they harvest, you can cut them at the bottom. And very easy, made to make wax removal. So this is a good wax building machine, as long as you have a lot of sugar to build them up. The cons, although you may need to only lift once or twice a year to make very hard lifting, because you're adding boxes below, meaning you have to lift the other boxes high enough to put the other box in. And sometimes this can damage the comb because they're all hooked together and stuff as they build them down. As you see in this picture, this is actually a great picture of a weir hive. You can see how all the frames right here are down, and then it starts to do the bellow off. And as you see, we get to this end one, the end comb probably wouldn't even be there. It's going to be against the wall. So without having any structure, sometimes you get what we call beard wax, and it makes it all over inside of it. And the bees will build their comb to force the air the way they want it to go. And this structure makes it very, very weak and stable for them. But like I said, if you work it slow, it's a very good hive for inspection. The frames come out, and it's another inspectable hive. Another type of hive that's based on all of this, and we're kind of getting into more of the commercial aspect, is the long horizontal hive. This hive is completely different. It's the hybrid of hives. It's taking the top bar kind of aspect and the Langstroth frames, if you choose to use them, or using the weir system of just the top bars across it and building it. It's really great for people their days are over. There's no heavy lifting with this at all. It's great for children. You can put multiple hives in there by putting spacer boards in between them and making different hives, so it's easier to make splits. If you've got a hive, you can open it like a treasure chest, and you put your tools and stuff on top of it as you work it. There's a lot of modified versions. As you can see, the one on top is a typical one that people build. The one on the bottom is actually made by Albert. He's out of Utah. This is an eco-type long top bar hive that he makes, that each one has a section for bees in it. The cons of choosing this is usually nothing, unless you buy like Albert's or you buy it from specific, nothing goes together. That these are typically built at home from blueprints, and then you put Langstroth frames in them most of the time. So the only thing that usually is transposable is usually the Langstroth frames, because everything else for it, the box design and everything, is basically your build on what you like. Because as you see the bottom, it's the same thing. It has the same design, but it's just about if you want to do some really cool stuff, like Albert puts the metal on the side so the sides don't deteriorate and stuff. So this is made for people that are not into heavy lifting, and it's like top bar beekeeping, but you have a structural frame to move in and out of, and you're kind of integrating a Langstroth method of beekeeping. The Langstroth hive. Well, welcome to the Toyota beehives. When most people talk about hives, this is what they have in mind: the box. It's white, or it's colored, or people paint them. It's a vertical model beehive that's key features was the hung frames. Made it so that you could see the bee space, you could check queen rearing, you could see American foul brood. This is the typical box that everybody uses, and it has been modified from several companies all the way through, from different types of landing boards to even sizes. That we use the M3 system. We're all medium boxes. This is deeps, mediums, shallow supers. It was a whole smorgasbord of things putting in to where the bees could attach the honeycomb to an inspectable frame for the beekeeper to manage. And before, with skeeps and stuff, you were drowning the bees, or you were cutting things out, and you were destroying the bees, and possibly even killing most of your queens most of your time by doing this type of inspection. So with these types of bee system, with the Langstroth hive, you're able to move boxes. They're a little heavier. You got to move a lot of equipment, but they're integratable with about anything in each system anybody's got. The flow hive. The flow hive was never a beehive. It was invented in 1940 by J.B. Guerrera. It's United States patent numbers right there for you. It was never made to keep bees, but it was made to eliminate spinning honey. Back then, raw honey became more of a need for food products like granolas, cereals, and sauces, and comb honey was kind of the way out. Most people would rather have comb honey because they know where it comes from, and you chew on the wax, and it's great. This was made, as you can see, the system was made for mass production of honey without removing frames or disrupting the bees inside the system. And as you can see, this is actually some of the patent of the commercial pumping operation from a flow hive, with the computer running the solenoids to open up the solenoids for the valves to just drain the honey, and it would flow into totes, and you tote them off. And this was all invented way before Australia and New Zealand. This was done in 1940. So this system of honey operation has been around forever. It's not new. But this flow hive, as they say, is not a hive. It is a honey operation unit. So I threw that in there so you can kind of see the difference, that this isn't made to house bees. It's made to produce honey. So there's a little difference in there. This is an eco hive we just talked about. This is Albert. I always pronounce his name at Corbachet. Someone's always going to tell me. I always mangle his last name. I always just call him Albert, and the eco hive. And the gentleman has been beekeeping for a long time and has developed what we call the microsystem. There are many microsystems. He even traveled all over the world to see other people's mini microsystems of the micro hives. And this system is basically made for queen rearing and split making. And it's a lot of fun because they're fast and simple. They got little frames. They're like little mini old Langstroths. They got windows in them. They got metal. They're very a decor hive, you know, for what they are. And that's kind of like what we talk about in our classes, that when you buy a beehive, sometimes you know, like I said, you buy the Toyota truck of beehives, and then you want to add a heater, and you want to add air conditioning and a radio and, you know, electric windows and stuff. This is kind of where we're getting into this modification, where you're going from just the Toyota Langstroth hive to where he's modified the Langstroth hive small, made it so the sides you can use your hive tools on with the metal bands around it. So this is a micro hive system. It's very cool. You can message him in Utah, and I'm sure he'd be glad to tell you more about it. But this is another acceptable hive system that people use. Oh, and the cool one that I wanted to throw out. Like I said, there's a lot of beehives out there. Perone, Sun Hive from Germany, a big ball that hangs like a basket. In Wyoming, it would be blown to bits. But there's so many great hives, and as commercial beekeeping has gone in Slovenia, Slovenia, they've been keeping bees for a long time. And the AZ hive is used in Slovenia. They're super cool. They're built to where you open the back of the beehive and the frames slide out at you, and you slide them back in, and you close the back. No lifting, no nothing. The bees are basically almost in Langstroth hives, except for the top bars sit in there. They build to come naturally, and you can open the back of the hive to work them. They build them in buildings. As you can see on this truck, they just pull them up, and they just work in the center of the truck. They just go ahead and open the backs of the hives. Really interesting system. They all have individual roofing flames. They all weigh about 6 pounds. It's a very interesting system of beekeeping. And that's kind of like where we're at right now, is it's not the hive, but the system of management you use. I've just shown you many, many types of beehive. And people build them out all kinds of stuff. I've built them myself, making circle ones that I liked, and hexagonal. I've tried different things. The one thing is, don't get bee lust. I just showed you so many hives. You're like, oh, that one's cool. That one's cool. These kind of integrate. Get a beehive that you will use for your system and go with it. And it's okay to have Langstroth hives and top bar hives. I got bee lust. I've got all kinds of stuff. But if you're going to make an investment to do beekeeping, I suggest that you find out a system of management that you want to use for your beekeeping. Because, like I said, when I started beekeeping and I learned from Jack States and stuff, bees will live anywhere. And it's about where you're going to put them and what you're going to do with them. So that's kind of that. The different types of bees. The thing is, beehives, I guess. The thing is that if you have any questions or anything that you want to know about different types of beehives, you should look in the system of management for them. But if you want to be a top bar beekeeper, look at Les's system of top bar beekeeping. If you want to do tree, there's a guy named Gabriel West of the Tree Society of Northern England, and they climb up in a tree and they hollow out a tree and put them in. So, I mean, there's a lot of different types of beehives out there.
Foundation. Oh yeah. But the claim for top bar is natural. It's better than foundation, which is probably not true.
What's that? Dave?
Unmuted.
I think you said that basically top bar wouldn't be good for a beginning beekeeper. Is that what you said, Dave? You're muted, Dave. I didn't know what Dave said. If you guys have any other questions about the different types of hives and stuff, of how they're put together, where they came from, like at the end of the presentation, I just showed that it's not basically the beehive that you have, it's the system of management you put in place. I have a friend in Florida right now. He's already gone through swarm season. So we're not getting into swarm season here in the Rocky Mountains for another month. So he's already done 2 treatments of OA. He's already done splits and stuff. And it's about climate, altitude, and location, and the system of beekeeping that you use. I use the M3 system. Some people use the just straight Langstroth system. There's the Fat Bee Man from Georgia. He does a whole type of beekeeping system. It's not really for honey production. His is just to make a lot of hives. If you want to learn how to put bees in beehives, that's a system that he uses to make a lot of apiaries. Does anybody any questions or anything?
I got one. Dave, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
This is David in Saratoga. I got one about a show hive, like inside a home, a piece of furniture next to a wall. Any ideas? I've always wanted to make a nice piece of furniture with glass walls that you can close up. Sure. Inside the house, next to the wall, and that sort of thing. Any ideas?
So, a lot. I had a friend that modified his fireplace and drilled a hole in the backside of his fireplace, topped off the top of it, and put his frames in, and you could look at the bees through the glass of his beehive. And on really cool days, he'd open up the fireplace and open up a window, and the bees would actually do their travel out to the window ledge and off from the window ledge and out, and go through his thing. His name's Rob Twyford. He lives in Glendale, Wyoming, and he did some cool stuff like that. A really cool one is to make a door. So if you do a door frame of your house where people walk up and there's the bees and the frames of bees right in your door. When you close the door, the bees can go through a tube and out. When you open the door, the little had little shunts on it, and it closed it, and the bees kept in the door. So when you open up the door, you could go through, and then when you close the door, the little shunts would open, and the bees could go through the tube in and out. And it was a full glass door I saw in California the guy had. I think it had 9 frames going down it. And it was super cool to look at. There's a lot of observation hives out there that you can buy, that you can put the single frame in and work with them. I think if you just kind of look at how you want to build it craft-wise, you can look at other observation hives that people have done. If you want to put it right by your window, you could make it even on hinges, where you could swing it open and swing it around and look at it, just put a tube. So the tube's always out, and the bees just go out through the tube, and I look on this side, and I turn it this side, and I look on it, and I did a visual inspection, and when I don't want to see the bees and I want them to be dark, I just put drape over each side of them, and they're in the dark. It depends where you want to put them, and kind of like how big of an area. Rice's Honey in Fort Collins, Colorado has, I think, like the largest observation hive. It is a 8-foot tall, I think 12-foot wide glass wall that has frames all up and down it, and they go right outside, and it's at Rice's Honey. So, I mean, how they work that one is it's in a whole room. So you go into a room so they can open it up, and then the bees kind of go in the room and stuff, and then when they close it, there's some openings, and they go back outside and then back in the tube and back up in this glass wall. But it's a very large observation hive. One thing about having kind of observation hives like that, they fill fast. You got to pull frames out of them. Sometimes, rotate frames in them, because you only put so many in an observation hive or something visual. The other thing is where you're going to work them, because now they're in your house. Right, so like how are you gonna work them? Like I said, the guy in Glendale, he got trampoline netting that went around the trampoline, and when he needed to do something, he just stapled it to the roof and taped it to the floor, and the bees were on one side of the house. And when he was done working them, the glass window went back open, and they just kind of went around and then back inside the chimney. But if you really want to look at I would look up observation hives. And let's face it, if you want to build one, get crafty, right? Put your woodworking skills or metalworking skills. Like I said, we just talked about, I can put bees in a trash can and they'll live, right? As long as I can feed them and they can protect themselves, right? So you can get really crafty. Do the original flow hive was actually made out of metal. Right, because they didn't have printing presses and stuff and molds like we do now to make that stuff. So it was actually metal, and the foundation stuff broke that the bees hem part was metal. So like I said, you can do, if you're really crafty, David, right, you can draw something on it. There's a lot of other beekeepers that even look at it and say, hey, maybe you want to do this or this. I would just look around and, Google and YouTube are friends and foes. I always like them as friends because I like the ideas. I use it as a foe because, sometimes it gives you a phobia if you're doing things wrong or right. So I just think that just kind of check it out. Building one inside the house, you can always just take your Langstroth beehive, close the front entranceway off to where you're looking at it, and put a tube on the outside where the bees come in and out. And I have some Langstroth hives that I've cut the back of the Langstroth out and put plexiglass in, so you can visually see the bees. You just take a board off and you go, oh, look, the bees are in it. You can see the frames all in it, right? So you could just take that type of Langstroth, right? Set it right there, and there's your beehive, and people go, oh, that's pretty cool, right? Plexiglass. Just build the whole thing out of plexiglass where you can see it, and get yourself one of those air conditioning covers. When you don't want to see it, you put the air conditioning cover over it and zip it closed. And when you want to see it, you take it off. It's all plexiglass all the way around, right? Things about that, though, is how do you clean the inside of the plexiglass from a little bit of propolis and bee poop, right? So more observation. The more you do with it, the more you have to work with it, because you still have to clean it, right? We always teach, we don't use screen bottom boards. We use the flip boards, the regular bottom boards where one side's deep, one side shallow, right? So we flip our boards and stuff. So if you have that, you're still going to have to make your own little scraper. You have to stick it in the insert way and scrape out the bottom, and from dead bees and wax that falls, you're going to have to clean that out. So I think on anything that you build, you have to kind of look at the system that you want to use to keep the bees, and then the performance of how you're going to use it. I built one for Platte County, an observation hive. It's for their science department. I don't think they ever use it because of legalities, and parents and nut allergies and stuff. But when you put it all together and the bees go in and out, it's really cool to watch. But those are only temporary. It's only got one frame. The queen lays 1,000 to 1,500 bees a day. If you're using mediums like we use, in 3 days those are full. You got to be, it's a little bit of work to be working something small and compact. But if you got time and you want to do something cool, like I said, I thought the coolest one was the door in California. You walk right up, and you want to keep people from stealing porch stuff off your porch. Have the bees coming out of a hole like a dryer duct next to the door, a big wall of bees looking at you. That was really something cool to look at. It was neat. It was interesting. I hope that answered your question, David.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's if you want to build something, we don't advance as beekeepers unless we try something. Right? People thought it was funny. They call me the Bee Whisperer. There's a lot of people called the Bee Whisperer. I got my name from the Discovery Channel because I was putting cell phones in beehives to see what they did. We got those little Nokia track phones from Walmart. We put them in beehives. And all I'm going to tell you, it's like living near the L train. Eventually, you'll stick your poster on the wall with glue, and you'll get used to the vibration during the day. Right. So I was communicating with bees by cell phone, the Bee Whisperer. What were they saying? They didn't care about that. That didn't bother them. They didn't care. They just propolised it down and just went to work. They didn't care. So, it just depends what you want to try. If we don't try cool things, we don't know what they do. Right. I think that's the best thing about it.
There's a question. Do they do tours in Fort Collins to let members of the public see that observation hive?
If you want to get a hold of Rice's honey, and what's really cool is that they have a guy. He came down to our last bee college. He's their new beekeeper. If you call them and you would like to come down and see that, they'll either tell you they have bees in it or they don't. In the summertime, they usually have bees because they can catch a swarm and throw them in there and do stuff like that. Or they can do, when your hives are really full, we'll go ahead and do just a quick shake just to limit down the worker bees. If there's no honey flow, that's when splits happen. If there's no honey flow and there's a lot of bees, you're going to have, that's when you have problems. So sometimes they just do a shake, and they'll shake them in there, marry them across and stuff. But it's Rice's honey in Greeley, Colorado. They're one of the people that they're a broker. One of the guys we sell honey to, right? When you sell barrels of honey, they're a broker, right? So they have probably great brown honey. And what's really great about Rice's honey, they're like us. If you want a pollen count, You have to pay for it, but they'll give you a pollen count of all the honeys they have. And it's a really cool operation. They won't let you take pictures, but you can go and you can see how they steam honey to bottle it so it's still raw and uncooked. Super cool stuff. Great place to go see. Any other questions? Like I said, I build them. Go ahead.
There's a question from Sabine on asking for blueprints on building a beehive. Do you have a resource that you use for blueprints?
To build a Langstroth beehive?
Yeah.
I think I think your best bet is just Google them and go. I'm going to tell you right now, I buy them. It's such a big thing. I buy a pallet of them from Man Lake. I mean, I'm just going to be honest, right? We're running half pallets. I don't worry about bottom boards and stuff like that. I'm running a half pallet system, and if I'm putting 3 to 5 medium boxes, or no, it would be 6 to 9 medium boxes on a pallet, and I've got 25 pallets running. I don't have time to jig. Those guys that do that, like Greg Burns in Ohio, where they got the jigs and they're jigging out all their Langstroth boxes and dado, and it's super cool. If you're a woodworker, much applause to you, because it's a skilled craft. To actually build woodware, this was the story I told you, Kathleen, about going to Texas. And I had kids kick over beehives in Texas. We all went to court. And when it was all said and done, I showed them how to build beehives, put the bees in the box and all the stuff. And the one kid goes, "You can actually have a job building these?" And I go, "Yeah, you should call it Danic. They have like big factories where they print these boxes out." He works for them now. The woodworking is a skill. It's nothing to laugh at people. Look at your cabinets in your house. I can't do that. That's not me. So, I mean, woodworking does take a skill.
Yeah, there's a gentleman up in Star Valley, up in over by Jackson, who builds beehives, and he's got the jigs and all the tools and equipment for it. So it sounds kind of a cool thing to do, but it's cheaper time-wise and dollar-wise to just go buy the components and nail it all back together. That's how I do mine. I buy them in a set and put tab A to slot B, and away I go. So it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's totally what we do too.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. But like Michael was saying, Sabine, you can do a beehive in just about anything you want. You got an old cooler, a big old cooler, beehive. Trash can.
I did one in a hibachi grill in New York. The guy put a hibachi grill, little bitty frames. People were saying, "What are you smoking over there?" And he goes, "Brisket." I'd say he was just working bees in a hibachi grill on the 5th floor balcony. I mean, you can put them anywhere. I put a link on there.
Yep.
You asked about the difference between a Toyota hive and a luxury hive. There's a link up there, and it shows you like modifications, door modifications, all kinds of stuff to go from the Toyota model to having some cool stuff.
Yep. So Michael, when you put a beehive together, I just use nails. I use just carpenter nails, but do you glue yours also, or glue and nail, or just nail?
We glue and we don't nail. We glue and staple. I guess nail. We use a gun, right? One guy goes through and he just puts all the wood glue on them, and then you put them in the box and you slam them together. Pop, 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 pop. And then throw the next one on. Pop, 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 pop. Then you hang them on a rope, and the guy comes over with the mask and the sprayer, and he just starts spraying them. Then they're all sprayed, and by the next day they're all hung to dry. We use glue and staple though. It's faster. And
so this is what I use, if you can see it. So I use a 7D 2 1/4 inch nail. Little guys, if you can see it. So this is what I use, a 7D 2¼ inch nails. I don't glue anything together. And then I like color. I think beehives should be fun. And so I buy wood stains. And so I have a turquoise one and a pink one and a green one. And so I think they should be fun. So I'm into the color.
What's funny is people don't understand that bees can see that.
I know they can.
You know, they actually get this. They'll actually get in tone to that. Even without the pheromone smell, when you lose a queen, they get in tone that that's actually the color home that they go to. And I think his name is Don the Fat Bee Man. I think that he does even rotation stocks by color. Instead of marking your queens, that hides that color. You know, that hide's about to go out. So I mean, yeah, they even know. So super cool.
Yep. So Michael, what about treating the inside of the hive? So you've put the frames together, you've painted the outside. Do you do anything with the inside, or you just let the bees take care of that?
The only thing that we do is when we put our pallet down and we put our 3H frame on the bottom of the pallet, between that 3-inch frame, we run a roller of beeswax on the ground,
Okay.
just on the bottom of the pallet. And then when you stack the boxes, what happens is due to the fact that when the bees start going, bees don't like things kind of clean. We have a blowtorch. Before we put them on there, we use a weed burner. And the guy goes through and he weed burns. He just goes through and burns the inside of the box as he goes through, and then we stack them. And that kind of deters, or it burns out, and it makes the wood want to be chewed on. It's hard to explain. Bees don't like clean stuff. And I think if you go in and you start coating the inside of your boxes with wax and stuff, you're only going to hurt the bees. The bees will coat the inside of a tree the way they want to. They have figured out how to, if you give them a home that's protected from the elements and they can protect themselves from the predators, and it's not, as Michael Bush has said, it's not too expensive for them to own. Meaning that if you start off with a nook and it fills up, then you make it into a bigger box, and then you add a box. That's manipulating your bees for growth, and that helps them. But if you just throw 3 frame boxes on and you dump a cup of bees and a queen in there, they're going to be gone in 2 days. It's just too much room. They don't have enough to protect it or to keep it warm or anything, right? So you have to start small and work with your bees as you go. And I think that when you stack your boxes and stuff, you just got to make sure that there's not tons of room.
So Michael, there was another question about, can you place beehives under power lines?
Yeah. Yeah. I used to have some at the dog park here in Cheyenne. Big power line goes right through the dog park here in Cheyenne. Used to have them right there because it was a really nice thistle field of nice Canadian thistle. So, you know, I'd move some bees over there, let them, just the beehives from my house, take 2 or 3 of them over there. You can hear in the morning when I used to take my dog over there, you can hear the moisture crackling the light, you know, because it's the dew and stuff. Man, it didn't matter. Those bees don't care. Those bees don't care about anything other than what they're gonna do. They're extremely motivated to do the one thing. I am 7 years old and I have to get all the poop out of the house. They don't care anything else. Nothing else matters until you are a pest. When you open up the beehive, they don't really care until you really start doing stuff that they're, what are you doing? Right? And that's when it comes with manipulation of smoke, and make sure you have your veil on and all kinds of stuff, right? Heck, you can train bees with pheromone and scent. They've got landmines in Montana that they bury, and they put that Syntex in the beehives. The smell and stuff incorporates with them. The bees land on the minefields because they're incorporated with it. They're not heavy enough to make them go off, and they dig them up. Bees are super, super insects. Ants and bees, man, are the most fascinating thing I've ever gotten into. I think that if you get your beehive set up and you work with them, they'll like you and you'll work good with them. My bees hate me because I got too many of them and we go through them too fast.
So trying to build a beehive on the cheap. I know the city of Cheyenne has the recycling yard on Windmill Road, and there's always some lumber in their recycling, and they'll let you just have. And then there's another comment from Ralph about the city of Fort Collins Recycling Center has latex paint there for free, and it's mostly
Nice.
left over from paint contractors. So I think you could do this pretty cheap. It may not be pretty,
Well-
but you could do it pretty cheap.
Well, there's, like I said, when Jack Steak, he had a box that said Budweiser on it. You know, it had the flaps that you put your hands in to pick it up. Those were the entranceways for the bees to come in. He took a PVC pipe and he cut a notch and a notch that fit on the box. He put wax on it, and that was the bar. So you just pushed that on the box, and there was your bar. For $1.35, he made a bee box. It was a beer box with PVC pipe. He made 7 of them. He stacked them up and produced, I think he said 300 pounds of honey, and set a FFA record and got a grant to help start. That's how he got started on this, is he proved that in agriculture, if you put this amount of money in and you get this much, that's the sum of business. So I caught a swarm of bees, and the bee box cost me $1.35, but I produced 35 pounds of honey from it that I sold for $5. What did your cow cost? What did you butcher it for? I'm going to tell you, for pennies, I made way more money than you did by catching a swarm of bees and putting them in a beer box than you going to buy cattle and feeding it and branding it and inoculating. He taught me a lot. Bees will live about anywhere as long as that you will manage them correctly. People always tell me, I just want the bees and I want to put a beehive out there. I just want the bees. They won't stay. And if they do, I've had people, oh, that beehive's been there for 30 years. It has bees in it. They've probably swarmed, had been not bees there for 2 years, came back, swarmed that hive, filled it back up. Who knows? You don't know. You haven't looked at it. You just told me it sits there. So you don't even know what they do. So that's one of the things about beekeeping. It's, like I said, it's not necessarily a hive. You got to have a hive that's inspectable. But it's the skill. It's the system you use. What system are you using? The Langstroth system, the M3 system, the Gobi system? There's a lot. The Rosewood hive method system. I mean, there's a lot of systems of beekeeping. Not only the hives, but how are you going to treat? How are you going to split? Are you going for production value? Are you going for pollination contract? You know, it depends. You know, there's not a lot of top bar pollination contractors out there. So that's something to think about.
So I have a couple more questions here for you that just came in. So from Debbie, you said start small. How would you recommend a new hive starting? 1 brood box, 8 frame with a package, and then add a box when, ? I'm completely newbie and adding bees in May. So when I started, I used a 10 frame because that's common standard and it's easy to get more stuff for it. But Michael, what's your recommendation?
So you use you. What I use is I use a medium box with a 9 frame splitter in it. So instead of putting 10 frames in it, I put 9 on all my boxes, and they're all medium frame. The system of doing that is that I don't have to integrate stuff now. I don't have deep boxes with deep frames and medium boxes, medium frames. I got it all in one system. I'm using a medium box with 9 frames on everything. Honey flow, brooding, everything. And what I do is I take that medium box and I build what they call a division board. And what I do is I take a medium frame, and on one side of the frame, I put a piece of 3/8 inch plywood on it. And then I put weather sealing on the top and weather sealing, door sealing on the bottom. That foam that you close on a door that seals. And I put that on the top, the bottom of that frame. And when I sit that in my hive and I put the lid on it, I've isolated one side of the hive from the other because they can't go over the weather strip. Our hives are designed that when we get a package bee, I put in what we call a split frame with fondant in it. And it has pollen and all kinds of stuff in it. I put a feeder frame in it. I put in a better comb. I don't know if anybody knows about it or uses it. We use better comb, or what we call a dead out, which is just comb with open spaces, and then a frame. And I put a queen in it and a cup of bees. And there's 3 frames and a division board. And as the bees grow, I just move the division board open. As bees grow, I just move the division board, and eventually that's full, and I just add a box, right? And I control the bees completely all the way through as I do them. And that way, all my hives are the same. That way, when I dump a queen and a cup of bees, all of them, I can manipulate them all the same as I go through. And if they're not all at the same pace, the ones that are moving faster, we try to do a little bee shake. You shake some bees off, right? That way they don't grow as fast. And the ones that aren't going as hardy, you kill and you marry, right? So that way you constantly have the same diversity. So when we put a package bee in, a queen, 3 pounds of bees, a 9-frame medium box, you put that division board right in the center, and you put frames in it, and you dump your bees in there, that's a nook. You just took your package bees and put it into a nook. They just need now to build comb. The queen's in there, the working bees, everything's in there. And I've just made a small nook. And as they fill that up over a 36 to 62 day time period, I've moved the division board over. Because as soon as she starts laying, we're moving, right? Because in 26 days, we got bees. I mean, 1,000 of them coming every day. Right, once we get going, every day there's 1,000 of them coming. And if she's laying in a medium frame, the system, the M3 system, is that we're using these medium frames, and they're able to draw the comb out in 3 days, and she's able to fill both sides in 3 days. So every 9 days, I can actually move a whole brood frame. There's a starter. Oh, there's a starter. I mean, there's the 9-frame system we use is a collection system. A lot of people like double deep boxes, right? I just don't lift them, man. I'm 50. I just don't like moving all those big boxes, right? All my boxes almost all weigh the same. They're all medium. They're all, my brooding's the same. I think if you want to use a weir hive, right, they're basically small, and they start off with only 5 to 8 frames. She said she was using a basic garden hive 8 frame. You're going to do just fine with a 3-pound bee. Just make sure you got a couple extra 8-frame boxes, because those bees are going to take off, and then you're going to have to grow.
Yeah. So I have found that I have some friends with 8-frame boxes, and it kind of limits what they can do, and it's not really a common size. It's kind of a garden hive, and trying to find more equipment for that 8-frame is difficult. And so the 10-frame is more of the universal, the Langstrom 10-frame. I also started off with 2 hives. I now have 3 hives. And so I can compare how each hive is doing, so I know what the norm should be, or what's going wrong. But Michael, someone else came in and said, could you say more about the flow hive and why it's not a hive? And I agree, I think it's a gimmick. And
it's not a gimmick. It's not a gimmick. I was a proponent at first, though. I was like, oh, this is crazy. And then I did the research on it and found out that these guys didn't even invent it. They just took what was already invented and modified it to be more up to date, right? Because now we have molds and presses and 3D printing and all kinds of stuff, right? That this isn't a gimmick. This was actually made for commercial beekeeping to produce honey. You hooked on a pump system on it. The solenoid turned the valve, the honey would roll down to this thing, and it would pump it to a 500-gallon tote. And on a system, when the weight would happen in the hive, these valves would turn open, and they'd pump it over. It's been around for a long time. It's not a hive. It does not hold a colony. It does not hold a queen. It does not do a brooding cycle. It has nothing to do with a colony and housing of the bees. It was strictly so you didn't have to buy a honey spinner. You didn't have to buy a honey house. You didn't have to buy multiple frames. You didn't have to there was a lot to it that people, I did a lot of research on it before I came out and said, it's just too damn expensive for me. I put out a medium box, produces 45 pounds of honey, and it cost me $30. This is $400 to produce 35 pounds of honey. And to maintenance and to take it apart and to do it is cool. If you were a big commercial company where you had a guy or a part of the company that they took the flow hives apart and cleaned them and got them ready for the next round, but they're not a brooding system. They were to eliminate a guy to have a spinner. That's what it was originally. You didn't disrupt the bees. The valves turned and they pumped out honey. You didn't have to get a spinner, a hot knife, a scraper, a hot tank. There was a lot. I mean, there was a lot with that.
So, Michael, what I found here, I've got some other coworkers and friends that have tried the flow hive, and their biggest complaint about it is that, we don't ever get really hot here in the West, especially in Wyoming. It stays pretty cool here. And the flow hive doesn't necessarily flow.
Well, that's true. And also about it, because the area that we're in, my friend that has a flow hive, after he did it, because it gets cool and you go to turn the gears back to make it lock back up, if there's any residual wax or anything that's fallen off during the split, it won't make them go back together. And then it just leaks honey all the time because it's not locked. It just leaks honey. I had a friend say that he ended up having to remove one because somehow the queen got up in there and started laying in the frames. And then that ruined everything. It was just, well, to me, I wouldn't care. I eat larvae and stuff anyway. I don't care. But, when people are like, oh, they got some larvae and stuff in the honey, I just charge more for protein. But people didn't like that. So she was laying up in there. And so I think the system is cool, but you have to maintain it and clean it. It's just, you don't set it up there. And if it's full, like you said, telling it's too cold. If it's cold, we harvest honey, just before October. And we harvest everything. People hate when I say that. We don't leave any because I don't know what the bees collected throughout the year. I don't know if they got into some antifreeze. I don't know what they got. And I don't want them feeding on that over the winter and getting sick, and then coming out of winter sick, and then getting into feeding them crap. So I take all of it. All right. So when it came to if you're going to take that whole flow, you might as well take the whole flow hive off at the end of the year, bring it into your warm house, and use it there. Because I don't leave honey. We feed fondant. We feed bees. We feed them. They're cattle. That's agriculture. People don't. Sorry, people hate me when I say that.
Michael, how hard is it to clean a flow hive?
I've only worked with one. The bands and stuff, and take it apart. I think it just takes time. It's like cleaning your gun or anything. It just takes some time. It's not hard. You gotta take it. You gotta take the frame out. You gotta pop the metal bands off of it. You gotta pull it apart. I personally would wash it in water with salt and vinegar, and then clean it all up with salt and vinegar and put it all back together. And once you get all back together, make sure the intestines and stuff are all closed off, because you don't want any moth or anything climbing up in there and getting up in there and laying anything. I understand that it's plastic and everything, but you don't need any fungi or anything creeping back down into your colony. All right. I don't think they're too hard to clean. I just think it takes time, but you have to. It's just like you have to take your hive apart at least twice a year in the Rocky Mountains, spring and fall. You have to kind of take it apart. That's how you know what boxes you got to fix. And if you don't do that, if you're not doing that, you're almost there. Then you're almost there.
Right, because once you turn the flow hive on, those little valves on, and you break that comb, you've got to make sure everything comes back in alignment, because if it doesn't, the bees will put it back in alignment and not in a happy way. So I've seen some pretty interesting problems. I've seen the bees treat it interestingly too. So this is a little bit more off topic, but someone was concerned about swarms. And that's actually a whole separate program unto itself. But do you want to talk a little bit about how to deal with a swarm, or better yet, how do you prevent a swarm from happening?
Okay, so we use the 9/11 method of observation. that means we're in a hive more and not less than 11 days. So every 9 to 11 days, I'm in there. So if I'm in a beehive and I see a little queen cup, we know that in 12 days, that cup should be sealed, right? So if I come back through, that's a queen cell, and I just remove it. I already knew it. I put it in my listing. I saw a queen cup. Okay, I go through so many hives, I don't see queen cups all the time. But I will see the queen cell on the 11th day, giving me 4 to 5 days before she hatches. So I eliminate it. So the 9/11 method is one form of removing the system of swarming. Is that if I'm able to catch the queens before they hatch and I can move them, I'll just split a hive. Or I'll encase that queen and put her in my incubator, and I'll call a guy and say, hey, I got a queen for $25. You want to put her in your yard and breed it? And I remove them. So that's one form of swarm prevention. The second part of swarm prevention is watching that life cycle of your bees. Now, when the hive is completely full and you're seeing lots of bees, like I open my beehive and it's like a shaking can of beer, they're coming out, and I pull a frame and it's full of cat brood, you better do something. Because if that hive's that full and you've got more brood coming, you need to eliminate something. That's when people do shakes. You shake off a little bit, and that way you eliminate it. I shake off a couple bees into a whole hive from 3 or 4 frames. They're all different bees from all different hives, and I shake them into that box, and I keep them in there for 24 hours. And for some reason, they're not worried about where they came from. They want to know who they're supposed to worship. And then I just add a queen. So that's another form of preventing swarms. Every pallet we have has a control box, meaning it has a nook, or we make mobile swarm catchers. We put them in the air, right? So that way, if we do not get there to do that, if the bees swarm, they go into a bucket. When we go through, I talk about weighing beehives. If the bees don't weigh like you think they should, they probably swarmed. And you should check your buckets or your swarm traps, because that is pretty light. You should check your buckets. I always put swarm traps out. A lot of commercial beekeepers don't, because they don't care, right? Because if we push them down, we're going to push them down anyway. I only want 2 boxes anyway, or 1 box for pollination. I don't care. If they swarm, I can still pollinate that, because the 1 box is so small and already with a lot of comb in it. As soon as she hatches and bred in 4 days, she's laying again. So the best prevention of swarms is to get on a timetable and check your beehives every 9 to 11 days. If you check them every 7 days, you're better than me. If you're checking them every 12, you might miss that swarm and that queen, because if you didn't catch it the first round, she went 12 days and she's probably already hatched. So you want to mitigate by watching your routine, and then you want to put out swarm catchers out there in times of season that you think you can catch your own. I don't care about catching anybody else's, because I already have swarm traps on a map in Cheyenne, where I've gotten phone calls over the last 20 years of where they found, and I just catch, the bees no longer go to houses and stuff at the VA and stuff. They just go to my traps now. So I set them up in locations where I've gotten phone calls constantly in an area. I put it in the center of that area, somewhere there's a bee tree or some guy not managing bees, and I'm stealing his bees. So that's I think swarm traps and watching your splitting and getting your splits done.
So Michael, can you talk a little bit about a swarm trap? I think we got a lot of beginner beekeepers here, and so a lot of terminology that they're not getting. So explain a swarm trap.
Sure. A swarm trap is a device, or what we call a mesquite hive. It was originally made out of like burlap and stuff, paper, and it like a big wasp nest in the air and had a hole in it. Now we've got where people are just taking a 5-frame nook and putting it up in the air with the hole. And to catch a swarm, you need to be anywhere from 10 to 30 feet in the air. People ask why. It's because that's the natural habitat of the bee. Bees down on the ground is where we put them so we can work them. Bees are found up in the canopies everywhere in the world. So you need to get your swarm traps 10 to 20 feet in the air. And if you put a swarm trap near your beehives, put them 15 to 20 feet away. Now, a swarm trap is a device that will house a getting herd, meaning a queen that is leaving with a group of bees that have gorged themselves to start a new home. Those bees are now active. How to claim those bees during a swarm is a great way is to use lemongrass oil. It is one of the most natural methods and the most smelling thing that smells close to the female hormone of a queen. If you saw a big swarm of bees going right now out of your hive and you put lemongrass oil in a glove and hold it up like this, the bees are, you just make a little hole like that, you hold it up in the air, the bees are going to crawl all over your hand. And within 5-6 minutes, you've got your swarm. And you just walk over and shake it into the beehive. And they're right inside the beehive. And then you want to put another glove over your arm so that way they don't smell the lemongrass anymore. They start going to that beehive. But a typical swarm trap has a couple frames in it or a large enough volume to house a colony. In the Rocky Mountain region, a colony will be the size of a football to a beach ball. So you'll need anything from a 5-gallon bucket to a deep box or like a frame, a medium box to house all those bees. What we do is we put this trap box, 5-gallon bucket, 10 feet in the air, in a location where we've seen lots of bees or we expect a swarm of bees to occur. We put lemongrass oil in it. I usually take a straw, packet full of cotton, and I put 4 or 5 of these straws in a pill bottle and fill it full of lemongrass oil. And when I want to do a swarm trap, I just take my medicine bottle out there. I throw my 5-gallon bucket on my swarm trap it in the air, and I put one of those little 4-inch cotton straws full of lemongrass oil. Just pitch it in it. And in my bucket, there's a little 5/8-inch hole on the bottom, and it just smells. That whole bucket smells of lemongrass oil. And since I put mine 15 to 20 feet away, when the bees swarm, they just kind of go, oh, there's that smell, and they go right inside the bucket. I just take the bucket off, and I dump them in a beehive, and I go. If you're using a Nook box, you have that in the air. Sometimes the bees will already be on the frames, and people like that because they just bring down the Nook box, and it's a Nook, right? It's got frames on it, a queen and bees. You just move them over. I wouldn't recommend putting anything bigger than a Nook box in the air. Like I said, I'm 50. I don't know if I want to be climbing a ladder. I don't have scissor lifts anymore. To be getting up in a tree and pulling all that down, you're talking a swarm of bees. It's going to be 5 to 6 pounds of bees itself housed in this box. And if you fall or something, you're going to get stung a lot. So the object is to have something that's easy to get to, that is a hive, which is a controllable building for the bees to get in. You'll need a lure to bring it in, which we use lemongrass oil. They're Man Lake, Dannett, Southwest Bee Supply. They all have some sort of what we call an integration or a pheromone to draw bees. And then you just need to put in a location where the bees will usually be. Like I said, 15 to 20 feet in the air, near an apiary or a bee tree. If you know where bees are, that's a super cool one because then you're getting feral bees local right out of there for free and they swarm into your trap. Waterways are always good. The one thing about waterways, though, is that you have to watch out for your native bees when you do swarm traps. In Wyoming, where I have some traps and stuff up in Glendo, Wyoming, we get lots of mason bees. So sometimes your frames will have big mud-like cocoons on them, right? And that's because the mason bees decided this was a good place too, and it smelled like honey, and they moved right in too. And you'll get layers of mason bees inside your hive. So it's one of those things I think that you should kind of watch. Swarm chat. We check our swarm buckets every week during swarm season or when we're doing that push to pack the bees in to make them do things. We put our swarm buckets out. Swarming in the Rocky Mountain area usually starts, I'd say May.
Late May.
More into June.
Late May, early June. Yep.
Yeah,
So Michael,
like I said, my friend in Texas has already gone through 3 swarms, and his swarms down in Texas and in Florida are the size of baseballs. That's a swarm to them, right? But their hives swarm like that 2-3 times a month if they're not watching, because they're just, so the temperatures and stuff.
so Michael, another question here about when should I expect to be preparing to split my hives? This is a new beekeeper. He's got 2 nucs arriving in May and concerning about doing splits.
Let's see here. I want to look at, I have that information right here handy. All right. So when should you expect to be doing splits with your beehives? When your beehive and its frame occupancy is over 80% full, you can split the beehive. So in our system, we're using 9 frames. When we get to the 6th frame, we could actually start pulling and making a split if we wanted to. Now, most people only want to split their beehives when they're completely full. And I think the best time to split your beehive is on a treatment program, because how we do it is we put a package bee in. 3 days later, we check to see if the queen's gone. 6 days later, we start to see if there's enough comb for laying. And then 11 days gone, I should have a frame, right? Based on that, that's a split. I could just take that frame out and let them go again, because that's got cat brood, probably some babies in it, ready to go. I just move it over with the frame of bees on it. They're going to go, hey, we moved over. There's no queen. Well, we got some babies. We'll make an egg and we'll make one. I think if you want to get on a treatment system, that's what we like, is that once we start doing that part, you want to do a brood break and then an OA treatment. So anytime you think you need to do a treatment of OA, of oleic acid, a vaporization treatment, I always do a treatment and a brood break, which is a split. I remove the queen and move her and make them make one. That makes a 30-day time span before they can have bees again. And mites take 15 days to reoccur. So I just stopped them from coming, because I made it so they had nothing to live in. For 30 days, they had no larvae to jump on. They don't make it. And with the OA treatment, I do that. So at the end of March, beginning of May is a good time in the Rocky Mountains to do it, because we have what we call it's like a cusp in the weather. You got to kind of time it. Like right now, it's 50 degrees out. Right now, it's a good time for you to go check in fondant, water, and all kinds of stuff. They're 50 degrees out. Tomorrow, it's going to be probably blizzard and 14 below. So you got to monitor and watch that. But when we split beehives, we do them twice a year when we do our 2 big, when we take our hives apart. Right? It's basically when I split them. Because when we come out in the springtime and it's about time to get our packages, about April, we might as well just start splitting and start treatment. Because when the other bees come, I'm hoping they came treated and didn't come with mites or something when they came. So I do a split around the end of March, April, and then I see how they are in June, right? Before big honey flow. If some of them, like if I had some beehives that overwintered and they're really full, and I split them, and they're still super full, I might split them again just before June. But by that time, I've already done an oleic acid treatment. So that way I don't have a lot of pests and stuff when my queens start laying again. And then in October, we do another split. And that's because we're going to compact the bees down. I'm going to make them so that way that $1 million mansion that they were in, I'm going to make a split from it. And then I'm going to pack the bees down so they're all winterized. And that way, if the split doesn't make it, the original colony did. If the colony didn't make it, I had a split that probably did. And if they both made it, I had hive growth, meaning my apiary grew for next year when we come out of winter. So I do splits twice a year. And I swarm catch all the time, all the way until the end of July. But when it comes towards the end of July, I'm mostly marrying my splits to hives because there's not enough food or nectar or time for me to feed them to get them to anywhere where they'd be profitable.
So Michael, we're kind of running out of time here.
Mhm.
And don't you think that swarms and splitting has a lot to do with how much flowers are out there blooming, and especially out on the prairie, which can be hugely variable from year to year? And don't you feel that the amount of floral resources, the amount of flowers blooming really will determine how fast you have to do a split or should be watching for a swarm?
Well, I think you should always watch the floral pattern. Dandelions come and dandelions go. That's the first and then end of the year. When you have high floral patterns, you make sure all your brood banks are full, because that's going to be honey flow. When there's no honey flow, hopefully your queen is in tune that if we're not bringing pollen in, I don't need to be laying bees. I need to probably be laying something else like drones for breeding colony, because we might not make it if there's not much food here. If we're not bringing in lots of food, she'll start making drones and telling them we'll probably have to split this hive because there's not enough food for all of us. So yeah, floral does do some things with that. But like I said, if you're full floral and you don't have enough bees, you better make sure your bees are compact. Then that's that management degree thing that we look at. Is like, I don't want my hives so full that they swarm all the time. But God, if I put in Hobbs half comb or Ross rounds, or I do those really cool tulip glasses with the comb in them, you have to have a lot of bees for them to do that. And I don't understand. I didn't understand why, but I've had hives that I do the same system with. If it doesn't have enough bees, they won't fill those. You'll get a little half thing of Ross round or something, right? Because they're more in tune to work with because they don't have enough bees. So it's a management thing. Like I said, if you're checking your bees every 9 to 11 days and you see queen cells, you remove them. Then you've eliminated. I mean, I don't mean kill them. I mean, just remove that whole frame. If there's 5 or 6 on them, they got these little plastic. I got one right here. We just did them. We just did 45 of them right now. You see this? This is a queen cage for your frame. So you got a queen cell on there. The queen cell's hanging here. I just put this over it, push it into the comb a little bit. She hatches. I got her. No swarm. I got her. Right? This is another prevention method. Right? So, I mean, sometimes you got to go from a Toyota Beehive to a Cadillac sometimes.
So Michael, we're out of time at this point, and so we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back with Dr. David Lewis, and he'll have a whole wealth of information for us too, and he'll be able to answer some of the questions that are showing up in chat. And with that, Michael, I thank you greatly for all your wealth of information and helping us along here with different ways to house the bees and dealing with all sorts of fun stuff. So everybody, we're going to take a 10-minute break.
Thank you, Michael.
And I will see everybody back in 10 minutes. So get another cup of coffee or tea or snack, or but see you back here in a few minutes. And Michael, thank you.
All right. How was that, Crystal? I went ahead, if you guys are still listening, I posted, somebody asked me where I got those queen cage. I got mine from China. I bought them by the 500 gross. But you can get them from Amazon. I send the 20 allotment of those cages that you press into the frame. Lifesaver. I just want people to know that you throw a bunch of those in your bucket. And like I say, if you get there and you got a queen cell, you just push that over it and you flip your lead from green to red, and you know that there's something wrong with that. And you go in there, oh, there's queen in there, and you pull it out. So these can help you on your swarm prevention as well as making splits.
Thanks, Michael. That was great.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate you, man.
Did you guys see the other post? That's a queen excluder for your beehive. That's how you separate the hives. Like you put one of those cages over a queen. Since I'm using a 9-frame system, I just pull out the 5th frame and I slip that in. And the side that has the queen hatchings on one side, and the other side has the queen that's already working. And that way they don't destroy the queen and stuff before she hatches. So that's a queen excluder. Or even if you're using like a long tabletop